No DQ Galaxy, we are live with a recap of AEW Dynamite for September 13th, 2023. I am back, business as usual, here on NoDQ.com and the YouTube channel. Much appreciation to everyone for their continued support. Let's get right into this recap. We are on the road to another AEW pay-per-view event coming up on October 1st, Wrestle Dream. This week's Dynamite was in Cincinnati, Ohio, which I drove through last week, and earlier this week I drove down to Pigeon Forge, Tennessee for my wife's double cousin's wedding. I did get to take a picture with the Cincinnati skyline. I like the area. Unfortunately for AEW, not a very big crowd. One of the lowest attended AEW shows ever for a non-pandemic show. Under 3,000 people, I believe, for this show. It was very dark in the arena. Crowd was pretty hot, but I would not call them one of the best AEW crowds. We kicked off the show with Jon Moxley, the international champion, versus Big Bill, Big Willie, whatever you want to call him. Ricky Starks was out there with Big Bill. Cincinnati, Moxley's hometown. They were behind him, as you would expect. Big Bill got in a lot of offense. Ricky Starks provided a distraction when Moxley was getting the upper hand. Moxley got busted open. Surprise, surprise. Can you believe it? Jon Moxley got busted open on AEW Dynamite. Can you believe it? After the commercial break, Moxley was able to give Bill a superplex off the top, but Bill was able to come back from that. Bill hit a boss man slam. Moxley kicked out of that. It was back and forth with these two. They traded shots, and once again, Ricky Starks interfered with the referee distracted, but Bill could still not put away Moxley. Bryan Danielson came down to the ring and attacked Ricky Starks to even the odds. Big Bill hit a choke slam. Moxley kicked out, and then Moxley applied a submission. Danielson stopped Starks from getting in the ring and breaking up the submission. Big Bill tapped out. No surprise here. Again, Jon Moxley's not losing this soon after winning the title, and it's kind of funny to me. Like, I am all in favor of Ricky Starks being pushed strongly, but I still find it amusing that Big Bill is the guy to set up Ricky Starks facing Jon Moxley in a future match. It's just funny to me. Big Bill's the larger, more intimidating guy, and he's the setup for the big money match, which is Jon Moxley versus Ricky Starks. I still miss Enzo and Cass, but that's just me. Good match, though. And afterwards, the attack continued. Big Bill and Ricky Starks beat down Moxley and Bryan Danielson. Claudio came down to make the save, and Starks was able to pull Bill out of the ring. Mr. Anderson sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you for that. Says, AEW once again with the blood overkill. I mean, it's a running joke at this point. Jon Moxley bleeding. It happens almost every week, and I think everybody was shocked when he had that all-out match with Orange Cassidy and Moxley did not bleed. That's when the real surprise is, when Moxley doesn't bleed in a match. Shout out to Andrew Rio from the Philippines. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate it. We had Adam Cole talking to Roderick Strong backstage. Cole was concerned that Joe could break Strong's neck. And Strong said not only is he going to beat Samoa Joe to advance to Grand Slam, which is next week, by the way, Strong said he will win the title and break MJF's back. We had Tony Schiavone introducing Don Callis with Tanesuke Takeshita. Callis talked about how they beat Kenny Omega twice in 1 week, said Takeshita is better than all of the Japanese aces. And he listed off several names, including Okada and Antonio Inoki. Now, of course, we have Wrestle Dream coming up, and I'm sure this was done with a purpose. Callis said that Takeshita is now the alpha, and streamers were shown, went off, whatever. Callis said that they broke Omega's body, and now they will break his heart. He revealed the painting to show the next target that they have, and that is Omega's buddy, Kota Ibushi. And then Callis said that Omega will watch the beatdown, and he will watch it like the pathetic cuck that he is. Looks like we're getting this match at Wrestle Dream. They made the Inoki reference. Pretty good promo here from Callis to set up this match. We still have what I think will be another Omega Takeshita match at some point, but we'll talk more about Wrestle Dream here in the coming weeks. We had Bryan Danielson and Claudio challenging Ricky Starks and Big Bill to a tag team match on Saturday's Collision. We'll see if people tune in for that one. Rey Fenix then confronted Moxley. They have a title match on next week's Dynamite. We also have Eddie Kingston versus Claudio next week, champion versus champion. Claudio has the Ring of Honor title, and Eddie has the New Japan Strong title, I believe it's called. And there was a little stare down backstage between them. We're finally getting the one-on-one match at Grand Slam next week. And then we had Orange Cassidy and Hook backstage, basically putting over each other. Not much to say about that segment. We had a four-way match to determine Saraya's opponent at next week's Grand Slam. Saraya is the reigning and defending AEW Women's Champion. We had Toni Storm versus Shida versus Nyla Rose versus Britt Baker. Toni Storm was going to the outside of the ring. Shida did a crossbody onto everybody on the outside. But the match really never got out of first gear. We had a commercial break, but when we came back, Storm ended up rolling up Baker and got the 1-2-3 victory. And she will get the opportunity against Saraya on next week's show. And they had another storyline going on here. Shida and Britt Baker weren't really getting along, even though this match was every woman for herself. I think that they were supposed to be not going after each other, but things happened. There was an accident, and yeah, now they're on the outs. Saraya was interviewed backstage, and she talked about being proud of Toni Storm, and she said since last year, Toni has lost everything, including her mind. And unfortunately for Toni, Saraya said that next week, Toni will have nothing left. I'm not really sure who I'm supposed to be cheering for. Toni Storm's acting very heelish. Saraya has been heelish. She still has Ruby Soho. Like, I really don't know who the face and who the heel is in this feud. So because of that, don't really care too much about it. We had Chris Jericho and Sammy Guevara come into the ring, and they have a one-on-one match on next week's Dynamite Grand Slam. They talked about the match. There was a video package showing their 4-year history in AEW. Jericho put over Sammy, talking about how he made it he made the effort to have Tony Khan sign Sammy in 2019. And Sammy said that Jericho was a friend, helped inspire him. He thanked Jericho for changing his life. He said without Jericho, there wouldn't be an AEW. But he needs to win next week because people see him as a sidekick, and he's there to be the man. He has to beat Jericho. Jericho responded by saying that Sammy will have to be the best version of himself, but Jericho doesn't think Sammy can get it done. Sammy was upset about this and thinks that Jericho doesn't respect him, but he's going to earn Jericho's respect. And he went for a handshake. Jericho shook his hand, pulled him in though, and said he's not going to go easy on Sammy and will beat the hell out of him next week at Grand Slam. Pretty good segment here to build up next week. Jericho did well on the mic. Sammy was fine. They accomplished what they needed to, I think, to build up some intrigue for this. We had footage shown from last week of MJF after he was attacked by Samoa Joe. He was not cleared to compete on this week's show, but he will be back next week. He basically predicted that Roderick Strong and Samoa Joe would make it to the finals of the Eliminator tournament. He hates both of them. He called Roderick Strong bland. He made fun of Joe. He said it's not the size of the dog in the fight, but the size of the fight in the dog. Promised to choke out Joe. And then, in my favorite moment of the entire show, MJF did some Scott Steiner math. He pretty much cut the whole Scott Steiner math promo from Impact Wrestling in 2007 or 2008, only he changed a few lines, brought up New York during the promo. I loved it. Legit funniest thing on Dynamite in a while. MJF's great. Love him doing his MJF math. Very inside though, like unless you followed Impact Wrestling and remember that clip. And to be fair, I think most wrestling fans know of that clip because it's been viral and people talk about it all the time after all these years. It was funny. I definitely enjoyed it. And we had Brian Cage versus Hangman Adam Page. Cage versus Page. Third match between these guys. I could have sworn Page won both of them. Maybe Cage won the first one. I know Page won the Double or Nothing match, which was actually a really good match that I still remember to this day. Both guys were on the outside early, and Cage tried to send Page into the post, but Page countered it and sent Cage into the post with a Hurricane Rana. And then Page came over the top rope onto Cage. Page got Cage back in the ring. Page hit the area code shot, which was the 619. Went for a buckshot lariat, but Swerve Strickland's music hit. Swerve showed up. Cage took advantage of Page being distracted. Cage suplexed Page with a German back into the ring from the apron and continued his dominance, but then after the break, Cage missed a moonsault to Page. Page sent Cage to the outside. Page did his moonsault to Cage on the outside. Page got Cage back into the ring. Cage was able to regain the upper hand. They were going back and forth. Crowd was chanting, "This is awesome." Cage missed a discus lariat to Page, and then Page pinned Cage with a deadeye. Did not even have to bust out the buckshot lariat. Page defeats Cage. No surprise here. I don't think anybody thought that the Powers of Pain knockoff had any chance of beating Hangman Adam Page. And again, it's funny to me, like earlier, Big Bill, 7 foot tall. You can't teach that. Intimidating guy. He's the setup for the smaller guy to have a match. Same thing here. Brian Cage, even though he looks like the Wish.com version of the Warlord and Barbarian from 1988, the guy still is intimidating. And he's basically putting over Page to set up the much smaller Swerve Strickland. Kind of weird to me, but it is what it is. The big guys in AEW, like, they're basically enhancement talent. Brian Cage, Big Bill, Wardlow. I mean, at this point, Powerhouse Hobbs, all these guys, massive, intimidating guys, yet AEW is the land of the small men. The small men always beat the big men in AEW. So after the match was over, Page cut a promo, wanted to fight Swerve, but Swerve was only going to do it on his terms. And he said that he will fight Page at Wrestle Dream, which is the home state of Swerve Strickland in Seattle, Washington. Interesting match that this will be. Swerve will probably be the babyface. I mean, Washington, I would say it's Swerve's house. And then Brian Cage and Prince Nana attacked Page, but the Young Bucks made the save, and the Young Bucks super kicked both Cage and Prince Nana. We had Renee Paquette talking to Danny Garcia backstage. Don Callis interrupted and tried to recruit Garcia to his family. Garcia basically shut him up by doing his goofy dancing, and that was that. We then had a tag team match. We had 2.0 versus Darby Allin and Nick Wayne. Christian Cage, no relation to Brian Cage, along with Luchasaurus, immediately showed up. Angelo Parker took advantage of the situation, and Jake Hager was out there. Basically, the Jericho Appreciation Society guys, they got nothing else to do. They're just bundled up together still. Anna Jay was out there too. So Jake Hager clotheslined Darby with the referee distracted. And after the commercial break, Darby made his comeback. Nick Wayne tagged in. He hit Wayne's World to Parker, but you had the other guy, Matt Menard, pull Wayne out of the ring. And then Darby took out Matt Menard and tagged back in. Darby hit the coffin drop, got the 1-2-3 victory. Match was pretty basic here. And then Christian got on the mic afterwards, and he talked about scrolling through Nick Wayne's mom's Instagram account, felt that there needed to be more bikini pictures, and then he got serious, said he's still pissed about All In, and he challenged Sting and Darby Allin to a match next week against himself and Luchasaurus, and that will be next week at Grand Slam. Mr. Anderson sent in a $5 super chat. Thank you for that, Mr. Anderson. I appreciate it. Says, best segment on AEW was Christian Cage saying Nick Wayne's mom needs more bikini pictures on Instagram. Love Christian Cage as a heel manager in AEW. Hey, he's the TNT champion, Christian Cage. Brian Cage wishes he could have a title just like Christian Cage. Just saying. We had our main event of the evening, which was Samoa Joe versus Roderick Strong in the final match of this tournament to determine who would face MJF next week at Grand Slam. Strong was stalling on the outside of the ring. Strong did eventually get in some offense, but it did not last. Joe was on the verge of winning with the Muscle Buster, but then Mike Bennett got on the apron. The Kingdom was out there, Bennett and Matt Taven. Strong took advantage of this, but could not put away Joe. Joe was still able to get the win here, even though he's a heel. It was heel versus heel here. Joe was basically the babyface in this match. He won the match, tapped out Roderick Strong with the Coquina clutch. And it was a good main event. After the match was over, Joe got on the mic to hype up the world title match with MJF next week. He said he's coming to Max's backyard. He's going to take everything MJF has, called him a kid once again. And then Joe left. Adam Cole came down to the ring. And Roderick Strong, as soon as he saw Cole, started acting like his neck was hurt again. He was on the mat. And then Strong ended up being stretchered out. The Kingdom was blaming Cole for this. And then all of a sudden, as Cole was on the ramp by the stage, Samoa Joe returned and choked out Adam Cole, yelling at the camera, saying he is, in fact, going to take everything away from MJF, including his best friend, Adam Cole. I like the ending. I like the angle to set up next week. Samoa Joe versus MJF should be a good match. Probably a great match with these guys. All in all, Dynamite was good. It was a filler show. Like, it was setting up next week. Next week's the big show. That's the show you have to watch. This was just kind of setting things up. They did some good angles, some good matches. MJF with the Steiner mat, though, to me, was the highlight. I give the show a B-. It was solid, but not necessarily a show that you really had to go out of your way to watch. It was more just, hey, we got a big show next week. Make sure you guys tune in next week type of deal. But I did think they did a good job setting up the matches for next week. And they did set up a match for Wrestle Dream as well. We'll see what happens next week. And I guess they're doing Jade Cargill versus Chris Statlander on Rampage for the TBS Championship, which, I mean, at this point, Collision and Rampage's viewership numbers are very similar. It's like Collision has dropped significantly since the beginning of the show in June. Guess it really doesn't matter. I mean, quite frankly, it should be on Dynamite, but you know, they got a stacked show next week with Grand Slam, and I'll be back next week for that. I appreciate you guys tuning in tonight. If you enjoyed the live stream, please do me a favor and spread the word. Tell a friend about the live streams and NoDQ.com. Anything you can do to spread the word would be much appreciated. Reach out to your friends on Twitter/X, on Facebook, on Instagram, any social media account, TikTok, so on and so forth. All of the spreading the word and just telling people about the site and channel is very helpful. Thank you all again. Much love and appreciation to all you. Have a great rest of your week. And remember, say yes to NoDQ.com. I'll see you all next time.